Hey guys, Aries here, making a video on the top champions to play right now to win all of your qualifiers, or whatever you want to call them, placements, provisionals, whatever you want to call them, or as many as possible. So these are the top champions to play to win as many of your placement matches in the 2015 season as possible. So this is going off of the pick and ban statistics, win statistics, just looking at it, which champions are strong, which champions got nerfed to make which champion strong, that sort of thing, just looking at the numbers, looking at who's playing what, just going through a bunch of different sources and figuring out which champions are the best ones to play right now. So it came up with this list. Now, I know the title says top 5, but I'm kind of torn between a couple picks just because of the way you can play them and the flexibility that these picks have, as well as personal preference. A little bit. I'm not... Personal preference does not go into most of these. The mid picks and the support picks, yes, but that's because I feel very strong about them. But I don't let personal whatever get in the way of making these lists. Okay, so for top lane we have Gnar. For jungle we have J4. For mid it's a tie between Katarina and Azir. For ADC it's definitely Graves. And for support I'm a little bit torn between Leona and Blitzcrank. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just going into a lot of depth with these, I'll just say how to build them very quickly, how to set them up, everything like that. Okay, so Gnar and J4 are set up kind of the same. Same thing with Graves, not as much for Graves though. So for masteries, for J4 and Gnar, Gnar you can decide which one you want to do. You can either go an AD page, like an ADC page, or you can go a melee AD page. So J4, you're going to be going 2190. Same thing for, like, all of these champions are going 2190 except for Leona and Blitzcrank. And, you know, very standard for Gnar and J4. You go straight down here. For J4 and Gnar, though, you can go Blade Weaving, Spell Weaving, just because they cast a lot. The big thing with Gnar, though, is it's up to you if you want to get Double-Edged Sword. This doesn't really help you in the laning phase, because most of the time, if you're first pick, or if you pick before their top laner, they're going to throw a ranged into you, or a melee laner who can close the gap very easily. So you're still taking a lot of extra damage when you're ranged. Now, I would assume that this changes to the 2% and the 1% when you go into your melee form. So this would be more for a teamfight mastery. If not, you can switch it out for something like Butcher and Feast if you don't want Spell Weaving. Definitely take these ones. For Gnar, you can go Enchanted Armor because he gets a lot of health off of his passive. Definitely don't go Tough Skin. This is for jungle. This is my melee AD jungle page. But yeah, so take out Tough Skin. You can go Enchanted Armor, or you can finish up this Veteran Scars thing. You don't really need Unyielding necessarily. But yeah, so play it by ear. This is basically what you're going to be running for Gnar and J4. This is what you're going to want to run for Graves. Now, I take Spell Weaving because he's closer to a caster. You can swap out Spell Weaving, Feast, and Butcher and take Warlord if you want. I would actually recommend it as Graves specifically because he doesn't build a lot of attack speed, he builds a ton of attack damage. So this extra 2% is going to give you a lot more than if you didn't. Since he builds, you know, he doesn't build a lot of crit, his only crit item is going to be Infinity Edge and then maybe a Zeal item if you don't get your Ghost Blade. But I still like Frenzy. It gives him a lot of attack speed if he gets those crits in a row like that. Now, I don't really like Enchanted Armor. I like getting the health because he gets armor anyways off of the off of his passive, and you're not going to be building a lot of armor or magic resist as an ADC, so you're not really going to be benefiting from that. The extra 5% isn't going to be that much. So yeah, and because Unyielding is so much better in this case because you're against a melee laner who's always going to be auto-attacking you, the enemy ADC. Okay, so Katarina is this. Just basically, there's not a whole lot else that you can do. If you want, you can swap something out for Double-Edged Sword, but I don't think it's really that great. But you can if you want. You know, you're not going to be running utility because she doesn't benefit from the mana regen or anything like that. Her cooldowns are relatively low enough that yeah, not a lot of this. Like, you're not going to get Alchemist because well, actually Alchemist you can get. You're not going to get Culinary Master because you don't use the mana. But yeah, so Katarina's a little bit better like this, but you can still go Fleet of Foot and then like Phase Walker or something like that. Or even Scout would be really good for her Trinket Shunpo. So Yeah, so those are your alternatives. For Azir, it's basically the exact same, except you can opt out of defense for utility for a little bit extra mana regen and health regen if you're going ROA Azir. Now, who else? Okay, so there's Leona and Blitzcrank. These are relatively the same. I have it on my Geodude page. So my utility page is a little bit, or my support page is a little bit all over the place. You can go 0, 17, 13 or something like that, where it's a nice half and half into the defensive and utility trees. That is actually pretty nice because you get the extra defense, armor, and magic resist. And you don't necessarily need all of these masteries as Leona. Now, I like these as Blitzcrank because the extra move speed with Moby Boots with his W, I think, like this, it just makes him able to get from mid lane to bot lane to mid lane to bot lane and gets him back, because if you've watched my how to carry as support every single game, I say play Blitzcrank, play Thresh, make sure that your ADC is safe, or if you get a kill, whatever, you have to go back anyways, and your ADC doesn't have to go back, or if you just went back and then your ADC goes back and you'll be in lane by yourself not doing anything, you want to be able to run mid lane, get a hook, get some summoners, maybe get a kill, and then run back to bottom, or get some deep wards in the bottom half of the jungle between mid and bottom, and then run back to your ADC when he gets back into lane and keep doing that. So Wanderer actually really helps a lot with that, with Moby Boots and your W as Blitzcrank. So that's why I like going really deep in the utility on him. As a Leona, it's not that important because you're not going to be doing as many roams as you would a Blitzcrank, but you'll still be roaming quite a bit, and this also makes sure that you're in lane as much as possible. Only thing is, you don't necessarily need inspiration if you're not going to be roaming. So these are very situational. If you find that you're going to be in lane a lot, take more defensive options. If not, take more utility options. Now, this is going to be very important if you go into the item sets, which we'll be going into in a very short bit. You don't need intelligence and sorcery. The reason I take it is because I really like the early 10% CDR on someone like Blitzcrank. If they're not expecting it, you can get the, you basically have a second off on your pull at level 1. So it's really nice if you know that they have a rough estimate of when your pull or your Zenith Blade or something like that's going to be off. But you do not need to get this if you're going to be going Frozen Heart, Locket, and Face of the Mountain. If you're going to be doing the full shield comp, you're not going to be needing these masteries because you're just going to be getting redundant CDR and you're going to be wasting them. But like a Rise page that has a lot of extra CDR in it, you can go above the 40% CDR if you're capitalizing on it for an early CDR benchmark, if you have a very specific timing that you're trying to hit. But I'm assuming most people don't look at things like that or as deeply as that because you don't have to for your solo queue games. You don't need to get sorcery. You can get Veteran Scars and Juggernaut if you want. I just like it for the early spike in CDR. Okay, so the only difference between this and your normal CDR support page is you don't get Bandit, and the reason you don't get Bandit, I don't know why it's doing that, is obviously you're not melee, or you're not range, you're not going to be poking them. You're not going to need Expanded Mind or Meditation because Leona, Blitzcrank, you're going to be doing your combo, then you're going to go back to lane. This is like the old Draven lanes, where you're not going to need lane sustain as a Draven or as a support supporting a Draven because you're going to get a couple kills and you're going to go back and buy, then you're going to wait for them to come back to lane, you're going to push the lane, you're going to get some kills, you're going to go back and buy. You're never in lane for extended periods of time, so you're never actually exhausting your mana pool and sitting on next to no mana. Likewise, most supports don't stack mana, so Strength of Spirit's pretty much wasted. This is a Rise Singed only talent, basically. And of course, you're not going to need Runic Affinity as a support player. You're not getting buffs. Vampirism, you're not getting you're not benefiting from that at all. Expanded Mind might be all right if you're someone like Tarek, but since his passive changed and a lot of other supports don't actually have mana scaling, again, this isn't that useful. So this is fine. You can also go heavier into the defensive tree. Okay, so let's look at item sets before this video gets way too long. So Gnar, very, very, very basic defensive build. So you're going to be starting off with a Dorn Blade or a Dorn Shield, whatever you feel like going. If you're against someone like Renekton or Riven, other champions like that, where it's a lot of AD casting, or a lot of, if AP, obviously you're not going to be getting the Doran Shield. Doran Shield is if it's an auto attack oriented champion. Now this doesn't necessarily mean AD champion. If you're against someone like a Lulu who auto attacks a lot for her damage, you can still start Doran Shield. Yeah, I don't know. And the health regen is pretty nice. So I've heard that the Doran Shield also benefits minions, but I'm not sure if that 8 damage from single target attacks, if that's also from champions. But yeah, generally if you're against an AD caster, you can go Cloth 5 instead of the Doran Blade. If you're against more of a tankier champion, you can go Doran Blade for more of a lane sustain, because you're Gnar, you have a lot of early game poke, early game bully. If you have that kind of bully and harass potential, you don't really want to be opening defensive, so you can go Doran Blade. This is really nice. Like your range, obviously, you'll be benefiting a lot from this. This is also like starting Doran Blade on Kennen, top lane. Alternatively, like you can start Boots. I'm not a big fan of it, just because he's already fairly mobile. Okay, but your core is definitely Boots. You're going to go Warden's Mail and Spectre's Cowl. These are the best for your early game tank or your mid game tank. They're inexpensive, they cover everything, health, armor, magic resist, and they have really nice passives. So Gnar, the thing about him is unless you get really far ahead, you don't need or want to build offensive at all. He has enough damage in his kit with his proc off his W. He's insanely good tank and CC oriented, like control champ when he turns into Mega Gnar with his ultimate and all of that CC. So you don't need a lot of damage. Like when you're playing Gnar, you're not saying, I'm going to kill everyone and carry the game. The whole point of playing Gnar is being able to control a fight and allow your carries and primary damage dealers to do their thing safely. So if you do get ahead though, you can go more offensive alternatives like Hex Drinker, Black Cleaver, or Triforce. So Triforce is definitely the most offensive one for Gnar. It's your very offensive utility, pokey, sort of split pushing item. Has the sheen though, and that's why I really say don't really get it unless you're really far ahead, because you are getting useless mana stats. So yeah, and you're not being tanky. So like yes, it's a tanky item, but it's not as tanky as Warden's Mail, Spectre's Cowl, and it's a lot more than that. So Hex Drinker is good if you have ways of proccing the passive on the lifeline. Black Cleaver is really good if you have a lot of AD champions on your team. So if your ADC is going like Ghostblade, Last Whisper, Black Cleaver is going to amplify their damage a lot, but maybe they don't have the item slot to get Black Cleaver. So you're going to get this to help support your team. But you don't need this. You're better off building selfish defense if you're not ahead enough to be able to invest into your team a bit. So yeah, so that's for the offensive options. These are more so if you get ahead. Okay, defensive options. Very obvious. Build something out of your Warden's Mail. If you still need armor after that, go Thornmail. Thornmail is a really nice item on Gnar because he gets a lot of inherent health from his passive. Spirit Visage, same sort of thing. He gets a lot of regen and, again, health gain from his passive. And then if you build any sort of lifesteal, it's just really nice on him. Again, Warmog's really good on him. He's really tanky. But typically, you're going to be building something out of your Spectre's Cowl. You're building something out of your Warden's Mail. I keep dropping a pencil that I'm spinning. And then you're going to be building either another defensive piece, or you're going to finish up your offensive alternative. So basically you're going to be getting randoms in every single game that you will ever play as Gnar. If you plan on getting like a Blade of the Rune King or something to deal with a lot of disengage or dive or something like that, if you find that your team needs a Blade of the Rune King, you can get Spirit Visage. You don't really need it. Banshee's Veil would be your better alternative. If you find you need 2 armor items, you'll get the Thornmail over the Sunfire Cape. Sunfire Cape's a good snowball item for the extra damage. And then just to round out your build, if you need a health item, go Warmogs. Really nice. And then you'll be an unstoppable tank. Again, to keep up with the tankiness, as Gnar, you're going to be going either Mercs or Ninja Tabby. Something about Mercs is it stacks with the Elixir, so you can get up to 50 or 55% tenacity, which is really strong when you're this big wrecking ball of a champion. Ninja Tabby, obviously lots of auto attack, lots of physical, you'll want to get that. Okay, so let's go to J4 because I'm going like top, jungle, mid, ADC support. J4 is very, very, very similar to Gnar. Like I mentioned in my jungle video a couple months ago before people figured it out, is you're always going to be going Stalker's Blade, at least 99% or 95% of the time on junglers. You're going Warrior because it's your old Elder Lizard, but Stalker's Blade as J4, he has a very early spike, he's very good early mid-game. You're going to want to be getting those early ganks off, and Stalker's Blade allows you to CC an enemy without having to land your combo, without your ultimate, without an exhaust, without lane CC. So this just makes sure that your lane ganks, or your ganks during the laning phase in general, are as successful as possible. Now, I should put Mobies here if you get ahead. So Mobies are your core jungle boot item, and these are just, again, you want boots. They increase your jungle clear time because you don't have to spend so much time running around. It also increases or decreases the amount of time it takes to go from a camp to a lane, so your response to enemy ganks are going to be faster. You might get there before the enemy jungler and be able to set up a counter gank, everything like that. Also, with how the new jungle is set up, with how I've been doing jungle, I used to do this a lot on Elise and Vi, like a year ago, maybe even more than that, because I came from support, so I'd always like to get the sightstone on my junglers. But now jungle is so heavily influenced on vision because your junglers are spending less time farming, they're spending more time ganking. Just because of how the experience curve is set for the jungle. It's harder to gain experience as a jungler, you have to be making more plays. So the sightstone makes sure you know where the enemy jungler is, makes sure your jungle is defended, makes sure your laners are safe. Likewise, whenever you finish your jungle item or your sightstone, upgrade to a trinket, make sure you know where enemy wards are, get all that done. So the difference between Jarvan and Gnar is if you get ahead, you can be building a lot of offense closer to Kha'Zix. So if there's a lot of AP, you can go Hexdrinker and a lot of other ways to proc the shield. If there's a lot of AP that doesn't proc this shield, you don't necessarily need it. Hydra's just a really nice pick on him. Ghostblade's a little bit of a cheesy sort of pick. It's a nice one if you get really, really far ahead and you're starting to snowball the game out of control. Likewise with Last Whisper. Now, like Gnar, Wyrm's Mail, Spectre's Cowl, very strong items, and you can build them into any of the other alternatives that I mentioned in the Gnar item set. Boots on a jungler such as J4, you don't need CDR, you don't need attack speed, you don't need magic pen, anything like that. You're most likely going to be going boots of mobility because you're a jungler, it's just really nice to have, or you're going one of your defensive picks. Okay, let's go to Katarina. Katarina has one of the simplest builds ever, is get your boots, get your 3 NLR items, get a Void Staff, and then get one of these 6 alternatives. That's it. So don't be getting Gunblade, don't be getting Hunting Guys. I have a video explaining why you should not be getting those. You can check those out if you want. But basically, Katarina has really good AP ratios, and because of that, building, you're giving up way too much by not building AP. So you're losing a lot of damage if you go pen. And that's why you don't want to do that. This combo has a ton of damage even if they build a lot of pen, because you get the 35%, you get the 15 flat, and then you get the 20 reduction. And then you get the DFG. So these are really, really nice, even if the enemies are building a lot of defenses. Yeah, and since she's a lot of burst, the whole idea with Liandry's is your target is not going to be alive long enough to get the 3 ticks or the 6 ticks, whatever, of the Liandry's. So go these, very obvious. As soon as you start seeing them build magic resist, start getting Void Staff. If you find you can deal with them all right without the Abyssal, you can go Guardian Angel, because you'll be alive long enough to get more resets, and then maybe you win a fight. Banshee's Veil, again, if they have a couple really important things that the Banshee's Veil will block, but not a lot of smaller things that will proc it, like very short Nidalee Spears, like short cooldown things, like a Pantheon Spear, just things like that, you can get Banshee's Veil. Most of the time, I will advise getting Abyssal Scepter, because you're an assassin, you don't want to be a fighter, you're not tanky. So Azir is not really the same at all for that. Azir goes your Sorc Shoes, Nashor's Tooth, Morellonomicon, and a Zhonya's, if you want to play like that. Instead, you can go ROA. Zhonya's is really nice, it makes you more of an assassin engage nuke sort of champion. Then after that, you can just go standard mage with a Void Staff and Zhonya's and maybe a defensive piece if you want. Again, nothing too similar. They're too different, but you're going to be getting the Nashor's Tooth and the Morellonomicon instead of a few of these items. Alright, so let's go to Graves next. So I posted on my page a Tristana guide a while ago, and I talked about the Caitlyn thing. I made a lot of ADC videos. I see a lot of really weird things on building ADCs, and I keep talking about it. I keep seeing things about it, though. So I'm going to go over it again. Don't get boots in the laning phase unless your laning opponent has boots, or if their support heavily relies on landing a skill shot. Morgana, Blitzcrank, Thresh, Leona. these sort of champions, you can get boots. Most of the ADCs you're getting, though, or you'll be playing, though, have a lot of mobility that you don't need the boots from. Caitlyn, Ezreal, Corki, Graves, they all have jumps. Callista, if anyone plays it, Lucian, like they all have these aspects of mobility on their kits that you don't need boots to dodge those skill shots, as long as you're paying attention. Obviously, you're going to be starting Doranblade, Potion, Trinket. When you can, you'll be swapping your Trinket out to a blue one so that you can check enemy positioning without getting close to the enemy. And that's the whole thing as an ADC. You want to be able to know where the enemy is without putting yourself in danger. Your core as Graves is going to be Infinity Edge. The thing about Graves is he doesn't need to be building a lot of attack speed. The only downside with this actual build that we've been seeing with Graves is the 5% reduction in Infinity Edge might, for the crit, might actually be a big problem for the rest of his build. Now, he gets a little bit of crit from Yumu's, but the active doesn't actually give him any crit. And this is where it might be a little bit crappy for him, where like only 30% crit, excuse me, only 30% crit might not be as good. So just because of the buff to the Phantom Dancer and the little bit of a power shift from Infinity Edge to Phantom Dancer might make Phantom Dancer a little bit of a better buy than Yumu's Ghostblade at this point in time, even considering the 100 gold difference. So, but I'm just going to give the old build. Just keep in mind Phantom Dancer might be a better pick than Ghostblade right now. But you know, you can go either one. You can also get Static Shiv if your team needs the wave clear. So keep that in mind. But overall, you're going to be going Infinity Edge. You're not going to be getting boots until you see the enemy ADC getting boots. The whole idea behind that is if they have boots and you don't, they're able to either run away from you or chase you down. At least if you get boots, when they have boots, you're back to equal footing. No pun intended. Definitely don't get Berserker Greaves. Don't get level 2 boots in the laning phase. You're just wasting a lot of gold. So it's going to be Infinity Edge, then Brutalizer, and then out of Brutalizer you can go Ghostblade and then Last Whisper right away. Out of Last Whisper you can go, you can probably pick up your boots then, because that will be out of laning phase. And then that's your big combo. With Graves, Yuma's Ghostblade with a rank 5E will give him around 1.7, 1.8 attack speed, which is really, really good. And since Graves is a caster, he has really good ratios on his Q and his R. You want to be building as much pen and as much AD as possible, because he's not the sort of champion that's just going to be auto attacking a lot. It's going to be auto Q, auto R, auto E, auto sort of thing. So the CDR from this is also really good, which is why you want to get it early. But most of the time you're just going to be getting all of your BF sword items except for Essence Reaver. You're going to get your Brutalizer into your Yumu's, and you're going to get some Armor Pen in your boots. So that's pretty much the build I go most of the time. It's just Infinity Edge, Ghostblade, Last Whisper, what's it called? Bloodthirster, Merc Scimitar with your Berserkers. And then obviously you can swap out your Berserkers for your Zephyr. 6th item sort of thing. Now, this is a really strong defensive combo, your Bloodthirster Mercurial Scimitar, because this gives you effectively 350 HP and 35 magic resist, and a soft Banshee's Veil. That gives you move speed. So you get a lot of AD with this, and you effectively get a Banshee's Veil. So you get 100 less health with 20 less magic resist, but you get the shield, and you get a move speed. So these two items are very good. The only downside to getting both of these is you're down an item slot. So it just takes up 2 item slots instead of 1, but the stats that they give you are really good, if you can afford them, that is. So obviously don't be getting the Bloodthirster if you need the Blade of the Rune King. But again, most of the time Graves isn't the champion who's just going to be auto-attacking a lot. So the Bloodthirster and the Merc Scimitar are going to make his combo overall deal more. Okay, so, and then obviously you can still get the Phantom Dancer instead of the Brutalizer, but I'm not quite sure if that's better yet. Okay, so Leona, if you have seen my other support discussions, anything like that, you know I really like Shield Comp, which is you get Boots, you get your Sightstone, you get Face of the Mountain, Frozen Heart, Lock of the Iron Solari, and Mikhail's Crucible. So what this does is basically gives a single target shield, an AoE shield, and a cleanse, and a heal to whatever target you want. So this keeps anybody alive. This is really strong for solo queue because it basically idiot-proofs your games. So the only downside with this is you're getting a lot of redundant CDR here. So again, you get 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, and then an extra 10% off of your masteries. So you're looking at 60% CDR. So Because of that, most of the time, if you can get your jungler to build Frozen Heart or Locket of the Iron Solari, get them to do that so you're not going above the 40% CDR and just wasting a bunch of gold on that. But even still, these are all really good items, and the Frozen Heart aura is just really, it's the aura that you get for your team onto their team is worth more than the CDR you're wasting. Because really, you're only wasting 10% CDR off of here, or maybe even just 20% CDR off of this item. But still, the aura is much greater than the cost of that CDR. So, alternatively, you can get the Randuins if you don't want to go over your CDR, but make sure someone on your team gets Frozen Heart. As a support, you know, obviously Leona, she's melee, get Relic Shield, Blitzcrank, get Relic Shield, get boots, get, most of the time you're going to be getting Mobies as early as possible to do some roaming, to get back to lane quickly, to be catching people out, get your warding done faster, that sort of thing. It's just really nice to have. Get Sightstone as soon as possible, but most of the time you're going to be going your Mobies first. You're going to level up your support item, and then you're going to get your Sightstone if you keep up with buying wards. If you aren't that far ahead and you don't get a lot of early kills, just get your Sightstone first, then get your Mobies. Finish your support item, then get either a Frozen Heart or a Locket. Tell your jungler or your top laner, whoever's the primary tank on the team, to get the alternative, and then just progress with your build. So these are also more obvious alternatives to a support player. Most of the time you don't want to be stacking health. On Leona, it's really good because she gets a lot of defense from her W. As Blitzcrank, it's kind of the opposite because of his mana shield. You'll want to be getting more armor and magic resist over health because that mana shield is effective health. But for Blitzcrank, make sure you're keeping track of or keeping an eye on the cooldown and duration of your mana shield so that you don't think you have all this extra HP and then you just get like auto attack and you die. So yeah, so that went a little bit longer than originally planned, but I really like ADC and support, so I tend to talk a lot about them. I never actually mentioned why these champions are really strong, but Gnar, again, he's a lane bully that turns into a really crazy tank and he can snowball really hard. I have a Gnar first impressions video where I touch on all the strengths of Gnar and saying that he's going to be the best top laner. I made that as soon as he came out, and people are just seeing that now, so that's kind of nice. J4, he's an early game jungler who has very decent sustain, very good ganks, and he snowballs really hard. And that seems to be the trend of a lot of these champions, is they're really good snowball with relatively good early game. Graves is... Lucian was essentially a Graves 2.0, but since Lucian got nerfed so many times, Graves is coming back. He has a slow, he has mobility, he has attack speed steroid, which means he can go full AD. He has a lot of upfront damage, he has a lot of burst, and he's getting really tanky if you keep auto-attacking. And that's the big thing. He's an ADC that's hard to kill, with a lot of upfront damage. That would also be why he's a little bit better than Ezreal. Ezreal has a lot more sustained damage if you blue build him. He has a lot more mobility, spacing, that sort of thing. But he just can't compare to Graves. And Graves is just really strong. Same thing with Leona. Like, these Graves Leona is such a terrifying lane that you just can't compete with Leona. What she brings post 6 to a team comp and a laning phase, it's just really strong. Same thing with Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank, you have to play more for the laning phase, though. Katarina, again, she's more of your snowbally sort of champion that if you get ahead, and if you're a good Katarina player, you will never lose a game. Azir is good because he has a lot of nuke potential and a lot of lane pressure. He can push really easily with his sand minion guys, and then if he W's on a tower, it deals a ton of damage to that, so he's a really strong pusher. Kind of like Heimerdinger, but a little bit closer to Lissandra or Syndra. So, yeah, so this isn't really a top 5, but these are my top 5, or top 7 if you want to consider that, champions to play right now on this current patch in order to win most, if not all, of your placement games. So feel free to check the social media links in the description. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, like the Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, request a video if you want. If you have any questions, concerns regarding the game, any problems you have with the game, anything that's troubling you, anything you want improved, let me know what you're having trouble on and I can make a video addressing that, or I can just message you and we can work on whatever issues you have regarding the game and we can get you climbing the ladder in no time. And yeah, so I think that's about it, so thanks for watching.